So create a new project. And the option is either to use Gradle base or just Android. If you want to use the new build tools, Gradle, then you want to use this. But the initial setup may take longer because it has to download some utilities from the web before you can start building your application. And the other option is to just use the old structure of your directory, which is this one down here. So I'm going to call it demo 1 or demo 2. Click next. And I talk about package name. So I'm going to use my reverse domain, edu gvsu cis, my ID, and I'm going to call it demo something. And show device dialog. And I'm going to click finish. Everything looks correct. Yep. Okay, it may take a while. So let me show you the structure of the project. So the source directory is here. Maybe I want to zoom in. Okay, I have only one. Okay, and I have the drawable in different density. It can always create new ones. Okay, and for this one, I'm going to need like two orientation, layout, portrait, and landscape. So let me show you how to create one. So I right-click on resource, and I'm going to say new, and I'm going to select an Android resource file. I'm going to create an XML file here. I just want to make sure that I match the other name of the current layout. This is main XML. So I want to create XML, main XML again, but this time I'm going to do it for my landscape. Okay, so I'm going to create a layout, and this is when you have to select the qualifier, the tag. So I'm going to create a new subdirectory based on screen orientation. So I'm going to select my orientation, and you can select the tag. You can add more tags. Let's say you want to be more specific. You are going to create landscape for large screen. You can add more tags in there, okay? But I'm going to just use one, okay? And the name of the file is main XML, right? Okay, so everything is good so far. This is for different orientation. I want to use landscape. So then the directory name is generated for you, and then you click OK. So now I do have two subdirectories. One is for just layout, and the other one for landscape, okay? If I want to be more specific, I can just rename that directory to portrait, okay? And then layout -port.
Will default layout always be portrait?
So the resolution rule is first, depending on the current orientation. Let's say the current orientation is portrait, right? It will look for that name under portrait. If it doesn't find it, if the runtime system doesn't find the name under the portrait, then it will look for the more generic one under layout. Okay. Did I answer your question? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let me design my screen, okay? And when designing your screen, this is like WYSIWYG editor. What you see is what you get. And currently, I have just one text view. Text view is like JLabel in Swing. And that text view is inside a linear layout, okay? I do want to create a grid layout, okay? So then I'm going to add a grid layout. How do I add a grid layout? Just drag and drop. So I can drag it here, or I can drag it to this side, either one, okay? Just drag it. I want to place it before my text view or after the text view, it doesn't matter. Okay, I do have a grid layout, and under the grid layout, there are several properties. One of the confusing properties is gravity. You will see gravity as layout gravity or gravity itself without the layout prefix. I will talk about that later, okay? Remind me. So, and I'm going to create, let's say for my calculator, I'm going to make a grid of 4 columns, right? So I need to adjust the column count, and I'm going to set that number to 4, and now I can start dragging components, and I can just drag my button, and I'm going to drag it here, or I can drag it into the UI. It's up to you, okay? And if I drag it here, now unfortunately button is supposed to be the child of grid layout. Currently, button is a sibling. How do I know? Because it's not indented, right? So sometimes you need to switch between the graphic editors and your text, plain text editor. So to handle this case, when you work with Eclipse, there's a way for you to move into the parent, but I don't see that option here. And this is when I need to switch to the regular text editor mode, but you will see the output on the right-hand side. Okay, so now you will see from the structure that my button, I have two objects, button and text view, but both of them are sibling of grid layout. So what I want to do is I want to move my button because I'm going to make my button part of my grid layout. So just copy and paste, cut and paste, okay? And let's say I'm going to name it, this is button 7, and then I'm going to name my ID digit 7, okay? Now, again, you will see a new notation here. What is that symbol? The at, whenever you see an at, that tells you what follows at is a resource. Button is a resource. So how do we recognize, how do we refer to the button in your code? For this example, in my code, in my Java code, I will refer to this button 7 as r.id.digit 7. Okay? Why? Because the category of the resource is an ID. That's why you see the ID following @ sign. The plus tells the system, I do need to create a new one. Okay? If you're trying to refer to a resource that has been created before, you don't need the plus. You don't need the plus. So question about how to identify your resources from an XML file, identifying your resources from a Java code. Yes?
So for the image, since the image already exists, you don't have to put a plus in there?
No. No, you don't have to. You're right. So plus means I want to create this new one. Okay? But don't worry about memorizing all those details because the editor will help you to select, to drag and drop. Okay? But just want to make sure they understand what's going on. And in case there's like an error, okay, there's an error in your XML file, then you know how to fix it. Okay? So I'm going to drag more buttons, and just going to copy and paste. And I'm going to repeat this. I'm going to copy and paste. I'm going to copy and paste several times. Okay? Now, magically, because I mentioned before, my grid layout will have 4 columns. By creating more buttons, automatically those buttons will be arranged into 4 columns output, right? And from there, you can just rename, change the text, and then I call it digit 8, and this is 9, and this is digit 9, and you can keep going, okay? And this is digit 4, and digit 4, and 5. Any questions so far? Okay, so you can continue with that editing. Okay, now what else? Now don't worry about this error. There's an error. It says it's missing layout height, layout width. Okay. In general, any new item that you put, any item, just not new, any item that you put inside an XML layout file is required to include a layout width and layout height attribute. So let me scroll up to the top. Okay. So here we do have the linear layout, and we do have the layout width and layout height. And what it's saying is, I'm going to use the entire space of my parent. So that's why it says fill parent. Okay. I want to use the entire screen. That's why I say fill parent. The width should fill the parent. The height should fill the parent. Okay. And how about grid layout? My grid layout, I also want to use the parent of grid layout is the linear layout, right? So you can see from that hierarchy. I'm saying the width of my grid should be the width of the linear layout, and the height of my grid should be the height of my linear layout. Okay. But what if I change that? Let's say let's say if I change the width to wrap content, okay? The auto completion help you to see what options we can use here. Guess what? If I say wrap content, what will happen? Now you see. Let me change that again. Right? Before we use fill parent, then the grid layout is filling on the entire width of the linear layout. But now if I change that to wrap content, it will just use enough space because now the width of my grid is to hold only 4 items, and then the required width is just that much. Okay. Now, one of the confusing topic in layout editing is layout gravity and gravity. What is the difference between layout gravity and gravity? So layout gravity controls how this item is placed inside the parent. But gravity controls how my children are arranged. So now let's say if I do want to make the grid layout centered, which attribute should I use? Do I want to use layout gravity or gravity? You can do it either way, right? You can do it either way. If you use layout gravity, then you have to use layout gravity in your grid layout. But if you want to use gravity, then you want to use gravity in the parent layout. The parent is my linear layout, okay? But now what happened, the effect will be different, right? Because then if you place gravity in your linear layout, then everything inside that will be centered. Okay? But if I use layout gravity in my grid layout, then only layout gravity will be centered. Everything else is not going to be centered. Okay? So that we have 2 options. So let me use layout gravity. I know you have to leave. I apologize. And if I switch to design, and if I select my grid layout, and if I change the layout gravity to center, then center vertical or center both. Yep, so it will be centered. So after adding more buttons, this is what we have. We have 10 digits, and we have 4 operators: plus, minus, multiply, divide, and an equal sign. But unfortunately, the layout doesn't look nice. We have the 4 column and 15 buttons. Let's say we are going to change the equal button to span 2 columns. There's a nice feature in grid layout where you can change the column span of an item. So highlight that, and from the property menu on the right hand side, I'm going to enter layout column span 2. So now, as you can see, the divide button moves over to the right, but still the equal button doesn't take the entire 2 columns. There's another property that we have to change, which is gravity, and I want to make it to fill horizontally. So let's add a large text at the top of the grid. Drag a large text item, and I'm going to place it before the first digit. And now you know how to use column span. I'm going to change that to 4. And we can change the background color. Hit that button, and then select color. Pick a color that you like. Probably yellow is not a good color. Let's take a different one, maybe a darker one. Okay. So we want to make the text to fill in the entire width of the grid. And the way to do it is by changing layout gravity to fill horizontal. But now we have a problem because the text normally on a calculator, we want to see the text to right justified. So this is when you need to understand the difference between layout gravity and gravity. Remember that layout gravity controls how an item is placed within its parent. But gravity is an attribute that will control how an item inside this view is placed. So since I want to make the text to right justified, then I'm going to change gravity to right. If I do want to put more space between the text and the keypad, we can change the margin. The common unit that we use for dimension is dp. By using device independent pixel, then Android system will adjust when the display is either like medium density or high density. And now if I want to put extra space between the text and the light blue border, I need to adjust the padding. So let's put 8 device independent pixel for the padding of the text. So let's continue to make adjustment to our layout here. Let's say I want to bring everything, the large text and all the keypads centered around the screen. How do I do that? So first take a look at the layout parameters of our grid layout. So currently the grid layout width and height is set to wrap content and fill parent. So now we can see the entire height of the grid will fill in the entire height of the linear layout. If we do want to change the center alignment of the grid, then we have to first change fill parent to wrap content, and then we do want to change the gravity of our linear layout to center. So now the text is centered, and I just noticed that we do have an extra text at the bottom. I think that's a leftover. That was the text created by IntelliJ when we set up the layout the first time. So we can just delete that. Now if you notice that currently we are working for Nexus 4, if you want to support different screen sizes, we can take a preview of how this layout will look on different screen sizes. And to do that, we can select preview representative sample. So this is the preview of the layout on a 7-inch tablet and a 10-inch tablet. Obviously, the size of the layout is too small for both, so we need to make further adjustment. So we can handle this issue in several ways. We can either create more layout files, one for a medium size screen, for a large size screen, and extra large size screen. But a more elegant way is to change the dimension of each button depending on the screen size. So let's create more resource file to declare dimension with different screen size. Let's call it keypad dimension, and its type is values, and we're going to include screen size to qualify the file name. And let's start with the normal screen size. We're going to add a new dimension, and the name of this dimension resource will be key size, and let's try with a value of ATDP. And let's do the same for a different screen size. Keypad dimension, and the resource type is values, but this time we're going to use it for large. And for this one, let's try with 100. So how do we use these resources in our layout file? So the goal is to change the width and height of all the buttons. So let's start with button number 7. So we change the layout width. So if you click that button, the dimension resource that we just defined will show up. And then we can click OK, and you can see now the width of that button changes to whatever value we put in our resource file. Do the same thing for its height. Change the width of button 8 to that key size. Now we want to make all the buttons of the same width and height, but one of the simple trick is to change the layout gravity of all these buttons to fill both horizontal and vertical. So let's multi-select all these buttons, and we're going to change the layout gravity to fill horizontal and vertical. Okay, so far so good. So now what we need to do is we can change the height of button 4 and use the resource dimension. So let's recap what we just did. So we set up a layout file, and the goal is to be able to support a regular size device, a large device like a tablet, 7-inch tablet, and an extra large device like a 10-inch tablet. And to handle different button size for each screen size, create multiple resource file under the values directory.